Estimados colegas, buenos días. Continuamos Festival de Ciencia, Cultura y Idioma Rusos. Ahora tendremos un discurso sobre el tema Russia in the Changing World, Political Priorities for Multipolar Sovereignty por el vicerrector adjunto de Asuntos Internacionales y Networking de la Universidad Lobachevsky de Nizhny Novgorod, Константин Валерьевич Кимаев. El discurso se dará en inglés. Константин Валерьевич, вам слово. Спасибо.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, I think, everybody. And I propose to build our speech today like a discussion, like a dialogue, and we'll talk about the transformation processes in foreign and internal policies of the modern Russia. So, first of all, if speaking about a transformation, right now we are living in the changing world, and the changing world, this is the time of transformation. And currently we are facing the changes in different spheres, in political sphere, economic, technology sphere, educational, social, even in the sphere of youth policy. If speaking about Russia, right now Russia is under the influence of the total transformation, so it determined by its internal progress as well as by the current political situation, I mean sanctionary economy, as well as maybe some attempts of Russia to change the world, to make it more just, to make it more flexible. If speaking about the political transformation, right now we'll start by them. We will talk about the collapse of bipolar system, which is known as Yalta-Potsdam system of international relations. So we'll also discuss the situation, what happened after that. I mean, the establishment, the attempt to establish the new world order, as well as the further crisis of the globalization processes. And we will also talk about the current situation, the transformation of the world political system toward the multipolar world, and the affiliated security challenges. Next, we will speak about the economic policy of Russia, especially Russian economy under the sanctions, and we'll also touch such issues like energy diplomacy, information security, and technological sovereignty. I will also, as well as we have the week of Russian language, culture, and education, we'll also talk about the challenges and transformation which is Russia right now are meeting, as well as social reforms and youth policy transformation. So, first of all, if speaking about the global political architecture. After the Second World War, it was established the so-called Yalta-Potsdam system of international relations, and this system determined the system of international law, as well as the global architecture, political institution, political processes, as well as decision-making process too. Initially, when Soviet Union existed, it was the system of bipolar relations, and very often such system is considered to be even more stable, like now, because it was the balance of powers. And you see, it existed two superpowers, Soviet Union and United States. Both has got some allied countries, and two systems coexisted: capitalistic and socialistic system. And even the modern politicians sometimes they are remembering about the system with some nostalgia, because it was the system in direction like black and white, so everything seemed to be very clear. And you can see the poster, the symbols of the Cold War era, as well as also the situation what it was in Europe this time. It appeared two political unions, NATO, as well as Warsaw Pact Organization or Warsaw Treaty Organization, and the frontier, the border was just in the center of Europe. But as you know, in 1991, the situation completely changed. So, the collapse of the Soviet Union was mostly determined by the internal situation, the crisis of the communist ideology, because many people they continued to be socialistic, but the elites they stopped to trust in communism, and they were like dreamers. So most of them were even called the Kremlin dreamers, and they dreamed to reformate the country to make some kind of the transfer from socialism toward capitalism, and to do it very fast. Of course, the Western world supported such initiative. They sent even advisors named Chicago Boys because they were from the College of Boston. And such advisors, they persuaded the Soviet leader to transform the country to start to the liberal reforms. And really, Soviet leaders, they dreamed that within 1 or 2 years, the country will be like the United States. But the problems happened in different spheres, in political spheres, which finally led to the collapse of the Soviet Union, in social sphere, in economic sphere, even in the sphere of culture, because the traditional values, the traditional public ideologies, they were completely broken, and the new ideologies weren't proposed. So, as a result, the Soviet Union allies they were betrayed because Soviet Union told it will leave all spheres of its interests, so it will leave all allied country and focus on internal policy, not like a superpower. In Central and Eastern Europe, it happened the so-called Velvet Revolutions, and many pro-Soviet leaders were imprisoned or even killed, like you can see the former president of Romania, Nicolae Ceausescu, and his wife. Soviet Union also lost the former areas of its presence like Afghanistan, for example, or even Eastern Germany, as you see the Berlin Wall, and it ruined was considered like a collapse of the Soviet Union and the new era, the wave of democratization. If speaking about the Soviet Union itself, it was a unique sample in the history of the collapse of the huge empire. Soviet Union was divided into 15 independent states. Of course, they undertook some attempts to preserve the integration of the former Soviet republics. And in the year 1991, in December, it appeared a new organization instead of the Soviet Union, which was called the Commonwealth of Independent Countries. But for most of the people, the collapse of the Soviet Union was like a crisis of thinking, a crisis of everything. If speaking about the CIS, the Commonwealth of Independent States, initially it was considered like the integration for, like the organization for integration. But frankly speaking, it was mostly the organization to ensure the peaceful divorce of the former Soviet states. And most of the goals of CIS were achieved. The Soviet Union disintegrated without huge military conflicts. Of course, it appeared some hot points. For example, the crisis of the Russian people in Baltic states, where many people facing the nationalism have to migrate, have to leave the countries they lived for generations since the times of the Russian Empire. The people, the Russian-speaking people who lived in these countries, they obtained the specific status of non-citizens, and they had to prove their political rights, for example, by passing the local language exams. Until now, this problem is not solved, and this is the source of tension in relations between Russia and the Baltic states. Another conflict happened in Moldavia. There is a region called Transnistria. So this is the borderlands along Dniester River. And for a long time, the people who lived in this area were of different nationalities. They were Russians, Moldavians, Ukrainians, and they were mostly Russian speaking because Transnistria was the industrial region of Moldavia. Its affiliation with Moldavia was a result of the Soviet administration administrative division, and when Moldavia became independent, initially it happened the process of intensive Romanization of Moldavia. And for example, right now there is no more Moldavian language, but there is Romanian language in Moldavia. And Moldavia is in the process of losing its independence despite of the resistance of the Moldavians itself. Moldavia is in process to be involved and to be joined to Romania. And Transnistria, as the most Russian region, it's an obstacle for such policies. That's why, since its independence, Moldavia was trying to Romanize Transnistria. First of all, it started economic blockage of the region, although it was a part of Moldavia, and until now it's recognized even by Russia like a part of Moldavia. But the conflict happened when the local police and Moldavian army was trying to arrest the people and to join this region forcibly. It happened a military conflict, and the blue casques had to enter and stay in Transnistria. And until now, we have a peacekeeping mission in this region, although Transnistria is suffering from economic blockage. Another conflict happened in Abkhazia, in Georgia. So for a long time, initially Abkhazia was a separate Soviet republic, but due to the administrative reforms, it was joined to Georgia. And when Soviet Union collapsed and Georgia left Soviet Union, Abkhazia declared it will leave Georgia itself by the same way. Of course, Georgia has all chances to deal, to negotiate about the autonomous or some specific status of Abkhazia, but instead of this, inspired by American advisors, they started a military conflict. So the military conflict, the war in Abkhazia, the first war, lasted 3 years, and finally the CIS peacekeepers also had to enter this region in order to stabilize the situation. The peacekeepers, mostly Russians, Belarusian peacekeepers, they were staying in Abkhazia until 2008. When a new stage of the conflict happened, it happened just in the time of the Olympic Games in Beijing, and the Southern Ossetia, the Southern Ossetia has been attacked by the Georgian army, Russian peacekeepers staying in southern Ossetia were killed, and the Russian counter-strike finally gave the independence to Abkhazia and Southern Ossetia. For a long time, Russia recognized Abkhazia and Southern Ossetia as integral part of Georgia, despite of the reality. But after this military conflict, Russia had to recognize this independent regions like new states. The factor which influenced our such Russian decision was the so-called Kosovo precedent. You know the case of Kosovo, when a part of Serbia has been recognized previously by the Western countries as an independent state, despite of the will and decision of the Serbian authorities. But this time Russia was so weak, and for Russia the main challenge was even to preserve its own territorial integrity. You know the case of Chechnya wars, and you can see in the picture. In general, there were two Chechen conflicts, and both were affiliated with terroristic attacks against Russian territory. So, if speaking about the first Chechen war, it was lost by Russia. And on the picture, you can see the Khasavyurt agreements to be signed by Russian General Alexander Lebed, as well as Chechen commander on field. So, in accordance with Khasavyurt agreements, officially Chechnya was a part of the Russian Federation, but really it was a fully independent state, even getting financing from the Russian budget. But Russian government can't control the situation inside. Soon, the people in Chechnya, I mean, not the sample people, but the elites, they became more and more radical. And they declared the appearance of the Caucasus Caliphate, Islamic Caliphate, and they invaded Dagestan and Ingushetia. Within such situation, it happened the Second Chechen War. Right now, Russia had learned the previous mistakes. Russia has got support from the local Chechen families. And finally, the situation in Chechnya has been stabilized and put under the control. Although right now Chechnya is one of the most secured regions, the counter-terrorist regime is still kept in North Caucasus. So here, for example, you can see the Chechen terrorists. Of course, if speaking about economic situation in Russia, it was quite difficult from the economic situation in the Soviet Union, where it was the planified public economy sector. But in Russia, the liberal reforms finally provoked the so-called shock economy, the economy without future, the economy which couldn't be forecasted. So, for example, many people they lost their employment, as well as to work in public sector was unproductive because for years the people can't get their salaries. In such situation of instability, the government started the reforms of privatization, and the public sector was shared among the people. Right now, we can consider among the richest people. The shadow sector of the economy also flourished, and by different estimations, the shadow economy in Russia in 1990 was more than 60%. So it means more than half. However, Russia was within the mainstream of the European countries. Russia continued to liberalize its economy, but we faced two shocking events. The first one was default in Russia in 1998. It was just like one of the consequences of the world economic crisis, which firstly touched the Asian countries and next removed to Russia. The crisis mostly inspired by George Soros, as you know, by his currency speculations. So within one day, only the exchange rate of US dollar differed 8 times, and the economic crisis happened. So it means no money for people, as well as Russian government has to declare the technical default. It was just the first sign for Russia that something wrong in the world system. And the second was the crisis in Yugoslavia, the war in Serbia. Yugoslavia was a traditional ally of Russia, and Russia has good relationships with Serbia. But this time it happened the process which was very similar to disintegration of the Soviet Union, the disintegration of Yugoslavia. At the same time, when Soviet Union collapsed from Yugoslavia, many countries were expelled, such as Croatia, such as Slovenia, but it remained to be within Serbia, Montenegro, and Northern Macedonia at that time. In 1999, NATO started a war against Yugoslavia. It was the violation of the United Nations resolution, but nobody can resist. And the pretext was to protect the Kosovo rebels. So, I think you know the case of Kosovo, but for Russia it was like a signal that sometimes the international law can be violated for the profit of the strong nations. So that's why it was like a revision of the previous positions of Russia, of the mainstreams in the foreign policy. The Prime Minister of Russia, Primakov, who was on flight toward the United States, ordered to turn back his plane. And the Russian troops suddenly appeared in Kosovo. For the Western countries, it was also a signal that Russia is rethinking its subdual role and position, not only in Europe but also in the world. However, Russia needed a strong leader because the first Russian president, Boris Yeltsin, was so old, and right now we are considering he was very dependent from the Western countries. The problem was how to ensure the peaceful transfer of power. And it was organized in a very original and strange manner. The 21st of December, usually we have the New Year speech of the president, and everybody were watching TV. They saw president. President was not drunk. It was strange for everybody because his personal ranking was around 5% only the last years of his presidency. And President told he would like to ask pardon from the people because of his reforms, and he will give a gift to the people. He will retire immediately. And the new president became the prime minister in accordance with the constitution, became the prime minister Vladimir Putin. So Vladimir Putin was like a gray horse. It means everybody knows that previously he was the head of KGB, or not KGB, FSB, Federal Security Service. But he was so far from the politics before. And many serious politicians didn't consider him like a political figure, so they considered him like a technical prime minister. That's why when within 3 months only Putin had won the elections and created a new political party. Initially it was called the Bear, next the Unity, and right now the United Russia, the leading political party in Russia. So when he had won, for many people it was really unexpected. So Vladimir Putin started the transformations, and in Russian history, for example, we have two periods: the so-called Yeltsin's era, and right now the Putin's era. So Vladimir Putin became president in the millennium, in the year 2000. So it means he is the president or prime minister for 24 years, like a quarter of the century. And for example, when I'm meeting young people, I'm asking, they can't understand that another president can be. So, if speaking about Vladimir Putin, initially, of course, he was also under the strong influence of the Western values, of the rhetorics to create the common family, the system of international law. So, in the sphere of internal policy, Vladimir Putin was focusing to preserve the integrity of the Russian Federation. Because, by the political point of view, Russia at the beginning of the years 2000 was collapsing, and there were really risks that Russia will disintegrate. It will be divided into different political entities. So, what Vladimir Putin did, first of all, he stopped the terrorist attacks from Chechnya, and Vladimir Putin was the leader who had won the second Chechen war. He founded the Chechens who were like pro-Russians, but really, if speaking in the categories of the real politics, we can tell that these Chechens were mostly for the peaceful development of the region. And Kadyrov clan was appointed to administrate to settle the conflict in Chechnya. And until now, as you know, Ramzan Kadyrov is the head of Chechen region, and until now we have stability in Chechnya. Another problem that Vladimir Putin's met was separatist trends of the regions, and this trend was called federalism. But what Vladimir Putin did as lawyer by education, he started the legal reform and he unified the local laws in their compliance with the federal legislation. For example, the region of Nizhny Novgorod, after checking the legal system, demonstrated 52 differences in legal law in comparison to federal law. Such region as Tatarstan, more than 500. Such region as Chechnya, more than 1,000. So it means the number of differences finally will determine the trend to separate from Russia. When the legislation was unified, no more separatism from the legal sphere. So, if speaking about the economy, Vladimir Putin, as I told, started to fight against the shadow economy and especially the oligarchs who controlled most of the Russian economy that time. Initially, the oligarchs didn't consider Vladimir Putin like a serious president, and they thought they can change him at every time. But they've mistaken. One by one, the oligarchs had to respect the Putin's decision or to leave the country. For example, Vladimir Gusinsky had to leave. Boris Berezovsky had to leave. Roman Abramovich told he would like to be a politician, so Vladimir Putin appointed him to be a governor of Chukotka region on the north and proposed to invest his own fortune into the region's development. After 5 years, Roman Abramovich told he never will be a politician. He continued to be an economist, an oligarch, but outside of the politics. The result of the first Putin's decade was that because of economic development, because of some incomes which appeared in the budget of the Russia, it appeared some finances to be invested into renovation and infrastructure development. That's why Russia accumulated necessary resources. Of course, most of them were obtained from energy trade, but right now these resources were spent mostly to the country's development. If speaking about the internal sphere, so as you see on the pictures, Russia attempt to integrate the global architecture of the world's political system. Russia entered and was presented in different organizations such as Council of Europe, such as NATO, such as World Trade Organization, as well as G8. So Russia was trying to establish a dialogue with the European Union and a privileged partnership with the United States. But all these attempts, all these policies existed until the time when the Western countries suddenly understood that Russia is restoring its potential and seemed to be the Soviet Union number two. Why? Because if initially Vladimir Putin respected the decisions of the Western countries, followed the recommendations after 2006, when Russia accumulated necessary resources, Vladimir Putin gradually started to protect the national interests. And he started to talk about national interests, creating some kind of alternative agenda. Of course, it was not from the position of the force, but it was a result of the dialogue. And of course, some rules and regulations were established, and Russia adopted all these rules and started to win. For example, I was working in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and very often I met the European partners, and they were really surprised. They told, please start to protect your own interests. What do you think if the European diplomats will protect them instead of you? So it means that Russia started really to protect its interests, and after that, it's considered to be like a challenge for the Western world. Maybe some kind of attempts to restrict Russia, just to check how Russia is powerful, if it's possible to restore the superpower on Russian territory were undertaken by the Western countries several times. The first serious attempt was in 2008 when they provoked the crisis in Georgia, and you remember it's ended finally by the victory of Russia and the recognition of Abkhazia and Southern Ossetia as independent states. But it was like a Pyrrhus victory. Because finally Russia didn't expect even such a result. It was like a necessity, like a need to fix the after-war situation. And until now, Abkhazia and Southern Ossetia are semi-recognized states. Most of the United Nations countries do not recognize Abkhazia and Southern Ossetia. But Russia had no choice except such situation. Next attempt, the same year, it happened the so-called Orange Revolution in Ukraine, when the previous so-called pro-Russian president was replaced by Viktor Yushchenko, resulting in the Orange turnover. But such color revolution, which were so successful in North Africa, in Ukraine, were not so successful. And soon the new pro-Russian politician replaced Viktor Yushchenko. It was another president, Viktor Yanukovych. But when speaking about pro-Russian, so I mean not anti-Russian, because everybody who is not anti-Russian is declared to be pro-Russian. Automatically, I do not know why. So, but Yanukovych also faced the legacy from the president, from the previous Ukrainian president. I mean, the move of the Ukraine toward the European Union, the inspiration to move toward the European Union and to NATO. But if speaking NATO, of course, public opinion in Ukraine was against NATO, as well as many people really desired to join the European Union because it seemed to them that the country will prosper. After that, the visa-free regime will establish, they can travel to Europe, they can find a good job, and the level of income will increase. Of course, in such situation, it happened just one challenge. Ukraine was a part of the Eurasian economic system and a member state of the Commonwealth of Independent State. To join the European Union meant to change the technical standards, the customs policy, but Ukraine didn't wish. It would like to be on the two chairs at the same time. So Vladimir Putin, when he was asked about the Ukrainian choice, he told, so it's just the choice of Ukrainian people. But they should understand that we have the technical standard different. We have different legal system. We have different rules. And if Ukraine will join the European Union, it had to adopt the European standards. So it means Ukraine automatically will leave the CIS and the Eurasian Economic Union. At the same time, Eurasian Economic Union was the most important partner of Ukraine, not the countries of the European Union. So, in such a situation, Vladimir Putin just asked the Ukrainian businessmen to calculate the profits and the prospective losses from joining to the European Union. They did, and in September 2013, they came to President Yanukovych asking him to delay the announcement to join the European Union. And the president of Ukraine was in strange situation. On the one hand, he promised to Ukrainian people to join. On another hand, the business is asking to delay this act. So, using the president's incertitude, the turnover in Ukraine has been organized. The opposition leaders were supported by the Western countries, and the main idea was to destroy the strategic alliance between Ukraine and Russia. So the European countries were the guarantors of the peaceful transfer of power. They insisted that Ukrainian President Yanukovych didn't interfere in army, didn't use the police to stop the protests. In such a situation, the European countries will guarantee that no revolution will happen. And the Ukrainian president trusted them. On another hand, the opposition's leaders, they wouldn't like to deal with the Ukrainian authorities. For example, in January 2014, just 2 weeks before the turnover in Ukraine, they were proposed, the opposition leader, to lead the government and to implement all reforms they proposed by the official way. By they refused because it means they will bear on all responsibilities. So finally, 2 weeks later, the protests happened. The previous president had to escape to Russia, and the new authorities immediately proclaimed the anti-Russian position. And instead to integrate the country, instead to start the good reforms, the first thing they did, they prohibited Russian language. As a feedback, some regions where more than 90% of people were Russian-speaking people. They didn't uprise. They started to protest against this reform. And the nationalist troops were sent from Kiev and from Western Ukraine to suppress these protests. So, as a feedback, the people living in the eastern region of Ukraine were declared to be mutineers, pro-Russian separatists, and the war in Donbass was started. The similar scenario was proposed for Crimea, and the nationalists started to form an army to invade the Crimea where the local people, the local parliament, were thinking what to do. And finally, the local parliament has voted to join Russian Federation and ask support from Russia. In such situation, Russian government was in very difficult situation. What to do with Crimea? To send the troops and to be accused in usurping power, in invading the lands of the foreign countries, or just to stay and to wait. But the Russian government knew that Crimea was promised to the United States to establish the sea base in Crimea, in Sevastopol, instead of the Russian sea base. In such a situation, it was just already the question of geopolitics, and Russian government had to send the special troops to support the inspiration of the people of Crimea, and finally to help to organize the referendum when most of the people of Crimea has voted to be within the Russian Federation. But the Crimean case finally did the polarization of the world. So Western countries, they showed the rival position toward the Crimean question, as well as Russia started to look for some alternatives in the sphere of political partnerships, as well as of economic ties. So Russia started to build an alternative architecture of the world, first of all within different international cooperation formats. One of them was the format of BRICS countries. And right now, we have BRICS outreach or BRICS plus outreach. And many countries would like to join, although right now it's not still clear for what reasons. And just to include new and new members, it means nothing because BRICS should be an effective Commonwealth. So currently, it appeared in new status, not BRICS members, but BRICS partner countries. And, results in this year, the year of Russian presidency in BRICS, the number of BRICS partners increased. Another format of cooperation was, of course, the CIS, the Commonwealth of Independent States, and this year it was the Russian presidency in this organization. Although many countries are trying to remove, like Moldavia, for example, we have a strange position of Armenia. We have also sometimes unclear position of Kazakhstan, but this organization continued to be effective. But we have already an alternative way. This is Eurasian Economic Union, like the most effective countries within the CIS, and you can see we have Russia, we have Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, Belarus, and Kazakhstan within the Eurasian Economic Union. And we have, of course, the Shanghai Treaty Organization, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, with the headquarters in Beijing, and the Organization of the Treaty of Collective Security, also on the CIS area. So it means that Russia has a network of different organizations with the format of the increasing memberships, and Russia can build an alternative structure to NATO, to G7 right now, to different international organizations administered by the Western countries. Russia right now is organizing many initiatives and inviting different organizations to come. Right now, especially the last year, they started to talk about the global south, speaking about mostly the countries of Africa, South Asia, and Latin America, the countries which have their own national interests, and the countries who can choose their allies themselves. And Russia is also against the polarization of the world. So it means if cooperating with Russia, you can cooperate with other countries, even the United States. All cooperation should be based on your own benefits, on your profits, and it should be like a win-win strategy. For example, the new centers of diplomatic life in Russia became Sochi, not Moscow, not St. Petersburg, but Sochi, when we have a serious area. And just right now, this week and today, we have the Congress of the young scientists in Sirius and Sochi, and our rector is attending this meeting as well as many young scientists from Lobachevsky University to straighten the scientific research contacts and to build the future research agenda, I think in 5 or 10 years. And of course, you can also pay attention to two leaders, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. Right now, we are discussing about the strong partnerships between Russia and China. Of course, within this cooperation agenda, we have sometimes challenges, but at the same time, it's like we have also long-term friendship, as well as we have to protect our own interests, as well as China also is protecting its own one. So, of course, we are facing some challenges right now. For example, in the sphere of economy, of course, Russian economy, this is the most sanctioned economy in the world right now. And I checked today, against Russia, it's established more than 17,000 different sanctions. So today it's 17,708. Of course, there were many challenges. For example, when establishing sanctions after the Ukrainian conflict, the Western countries, they consider that Russian economy will be destroyed very quickly, but we are providing some kind of sustainability, and even Russia's economy growth this year is more than 4%. Compared to the United States and to European countries, this is an achievement. For example, even Forbes considered Russian economy to be the third in the world by the rate of economic growth. So you can see different sanctions, and most of them is their result to punish Russia because of the current operation in Ukraine. So, if you want, we can even dedicate a separate lecture to Ukrainian conflict, to Ukrainian situation, uh, because it's quite sophisticated, especially for Russian and Ukrainian people who has long history of coexistence, of co-living together within the same state. But in general, what specific feature of Russia, even in the regime of sanctions, in the political transformation, that the Western world, like Josep Borrell declared, the head of the European Commission, the European Union, it's like a garden, and the rest of the world is a jungle. So Russia, as a part of this jungle, is proposing the world founded or based on the pragmatism, on the international law and traditional values, as well as the political priorities and value system of the European Union. Sometimes it's not so clear. So you can see on the map the countries which imposed sanctions against Russia, and most of them, of course, are the Western countries, the so-called gold billion. Of course, as well as the most important source of income for Russian budget, for Russian economy, was the energy transfer. You understand that to damage Russian economy was to destroy the Russian energy and technology security. And you remember about the terrorist attack against Nord Stream, to stop the oil supply and gas supply to Europe, to European countries. So as a result, Russia right now is looking for new markets, and we have strong companies which can export traditional energy sources like Lukoil company, as well as Russia right now is in the process to develop new technologies and new energy businesses to provide its technological sovereignty. And one of the most important companies is Rosatom company. So next week, for example, I am going for a special Rosatom session, and we will discuss how to develop different models of cooperation, joint programs between Russian and foreign universities attracting Rosatom resources and technologies. Of course, another very important point of view was the educational transfer. As you know, for example, Russia was one of the participants of the Bologna project. And after the Ukrainian crisis, it was started a discussion how to leave the Bologna process. Russia was announced to be expelled from the Bologna process, and it appeared many fears that Russian diploma and qualifications will never be recognized abroad. So, first of all, I remember this discussion in Russian parliament because the deputies they met together and they started to discuss how to cancel the Bologna system in Russia. And they were surprised to find that, sorry, there is no cancellation mechanism. The country can join and can leave Bologna process within its own will. So, okay, how to leave the Bologna process? The deputies started to read the Bologna Declaration. No mechanism how to leave. So, finally, they decided just to declare that Russia is leaving Bologna process. Okay, and what else? So, if speaking about traditional system of education, we preserved the LMD system, so it means bachelor, master, PhD. If speaking about credits, academic credits, we preserve academic credits. If speaking about the recognition of diploma, sorry, but the recognition process is out of the Bologna system. For example, we have United States, we have Canada, we have New Zealand, Australia, China, which are not the participants of the Bologna process, but their diplomas are recognized. We have UK, which is leaving the European Union, but the diploma is recognized. I think Mexico and most of Latin American countries are also not the members of the Bologna process, but they're playing the same rules, the same standards like Bologna process is doing. So as well as in Russia, the educational system continued to be the same. However, we decided to make some specifics to make a reformation of the educational system. And within the new reform, it was launched a new pilot project in 6 Russian universities with new levels of education. In parallel to LMD system, it was launched the so-called basic higher education and advanced higher education. But our university is not involved, and on my opinion, so the basic education it's like undergraduate education, so it means like bachelor or specialist, as well as advanced education it's like master education. It's just a rebranding of the names of the level of educations, nothing else. So, if speaking about the university transformation, of course, we faced 2 challenges. The first one was COVID challenge when we have to revise our standard of education, system of education, as well as education quality assurance. And the next challenge was, of course, the current sanctionary policy, mostly of the European Union. Previously, Russian universities were oriented to cooperate with European partners. And I talked to my colleagues. I have the sample of our university. Approximately 80% of the partnerships were affiliated with Western countries. So when the Ukrainian crisis happened, we have to reorient to move to the East, for example, to Africa, to the Middle East, where we have founded new partners. And right now, the partnership networks for all Russian universities are restored without European partners. So, results in such transformation, the universities are in process to introduce new languages in the teaching process. For example, Chinese, Arabic, Hindi, Farsi. So I think in general it will make our education stronger and more competitive. We do not leave the international rankings, although most of them are held by the Western private companies. So the university is in process to transform just the vision of the university itself. If previously most of Russian universities were the classical model of Humboldt University, right now we are moving to the University 3.0, 5.0. So it means the university is in process to get more and more missions outside of teaching and science, like social mission, like public diplomacy mission, like employment mission, etc. So as a result, many business partners were involved into the university activities. We are in process to create the joint labs, for example. So right now we cannot imagine a Russian university without a strong business partnerships. First of all, we have a special order from the public authorities for business to come to the university and to cooperate. Why? Because in Russia, if speaking about job opportunities right now, we have many vacancies and few people willing to work. So it means that right now it's a good time to build a career in Russia. But if speaking about Russian universities, of course, for a long time Russia was proud of its fundamental education. But right now we are facing the situation of microcredits, of online courses, of practical oriented courses, of corporate universities, of huge companies. So in such a situation, the university curricula should be more practical oriented and more flexible. That's why right now universities, Russian universities, are in process to design the so-called careers of the future. So we have the handbook of the careers of the future, and we are trying to generate some new specialities which will be very important in 3 or 5 years and which will be well connected with the business inspirations. For example, right now we are closely cooperating with Russian companies like Sber, like Rosatom, like Mera, like Yandex, as well as with some foreign countries, not Western countries right now, but Huawei, for example. We have strong partnership with these companies, building the future together, creating new ideas, new technologies together. So, as a result, within Russian national policy, it was declared that 30 world-class campuses will be built in Russia in different cities, in different universities. And Lobachevsky University is proud to announce that one of the first world-class campuses will be built in Nizhny Novgorod on the ground of Lobachevsky University. You can see on the picture, this is Neymar campus, which will include world-class labs, startups, as well as student hostels. We have already, sorry, this is the computer graphics, of course, but we have already started this construction. So the government also announced that it's very interested to attract young specialists and talented scientists from abroad. And you know maybe about the Russian scholarship. project, I mean the scholarships provided by the Russian government every year on competitive basis. But since the next year, Russian government will launch a new initiative. It will also provide the grants like additional financial support for the most talented students selected within the quota of the Russian government. And this grant system will include the flight tickets. It will include the financial coverage of the accommodation fees, medical insurance, visa, as well as additional monthly allowance, monthly bursary. So initially they will provide 2,000 grants, but before 2030, in general, they will provide 10,000 grants. So it means it's a big chance to start your career in Russia. And finally, speaking about the YAF policy transformation. So right now, the last year it was a reform in Russia, and YAF people were declared the people before 35 years. So it's a little bit amusing. So, but in every case, in Russia, young people, it means the people before 35 years can get more and more opportunities to take part in different grant projects, to realize a social activity project or initiatives, to be volunteers, to take part in different forums and conferences. So right now in Russia we have different YAF campuses and the annual agenda. For example, you can start in Sirius and Sochi, next go to Mashuk in North Caucasus, next to Kamchatka or to the Far East in the campus Oceanis. Next to St. Petersburg, they have their own winter university, etc. So it means that young people can meet together, and right now they can find the engagement and they can build a career just through such type of the activities. And of course, thank you for your attention. If you have some questions, I will be happy to answer to you.
Muchas gracias por su presentación, Constantino Valerio. Estimados colegas, ¿alguien tiene las preguntas por nuestro lector? ¿Preguntas o comentarios?
Mhm. Yes. Okay. So, if speaking about United States, I see in the chat, yes, the first question. So, the first question about the trial states. United States, China, and Russia's role. Okay, if when speaking about bipolar world, so it was the world between Soviet Union and United States. Right now, sometimes we can meet an opinion that China, this is the first superpower, as well as United States are the second. Of course, because, for example, China has the most powerful economy in the world, and United States, as a formal superpower, had to consider this evidence. We have some sanctionary policy of the United States toward China, as well as we have also dumping policy and lobbying policy of China in the sphere of economy. We have the question of Taiwan in relations between China and the United States. So, if speaking about American strategy, for example, of course, the United States are considering China as not a rival, but as a competitor of the United States. In such situation, Russia has a very strong and original position because Russia could be like the third member within this group. If speaking about China, China is developing mostly in the economic point of view, as well as Russia can propose a political model, alternative political model. For example, United States, you can see for the current situation of Ukraine, United States are still continuing to cooperate with Russia in different spheres, for example, in space technologies, as well as we have many discussion in the American establishment about Russia's position, about Russia's partnership with China, and American elites has already understood that they've mistaken when they broken most of their relations and they started a rival rhetorics against Russia, and finally they encouraged Russia to strongly be well affiliated with China. And really, for example, if previously more than 80% of the Russian economy were oriented to American and European market, and China was only the third Russian trade partner. Right now, China, this is the first Russian trade partner. Chinese businessmen, they can get many discounts because the trade with European countries is frozen. At the same time, China can get access to cheap energy and to Russian technologies. In such situation, China can compete with the United States and with the European countries. I was in China several times. The last time I was in October, and I can see the transformation of Chinese security. We can speak many time about Russian and Chinese friendship. Of course, it exists. But I think more efficient that we have pragmatic interest and the win-win strategy in our relationships. In such situations, Americans are trying to do what they can propose to Russia, maybe to restore the previous privileged position in relations. So it means that if previously China, which was out of the conflict, of Ukrainian conflict, China can choose what to offer to Russia, what not to offer. Right now, Russia in the position when Russia can choose to closely cooperate with China or maybe to make some references, some approaches, reapproachment to America and to Europe. So if speaking about the second question about the conflicts such as war in Ukraine, so it's very difficult why in Russia it's called special operation. Because for the Russian society, the war in Ukraine is considered like a civil war because, for example, for a long time we were the same state, even not politically, but also historically, culturally. The Ukrainian community in Russia is the second by the number of population. Many people living in Ukraine are Russians by nationality. The language also was Russian. The culture is the same. So it means that the conflict mostly in the sphere of geopolitics, even for Western country, it was just the way to make Russia weaker. And they accept this, they recognize this. Right now, they're using the corrupted elites in Ukraine in preserving the conflict situation so long as they can. Not to permit to Russia to build a multipolar world. Also, it was one of the reasons why, because Russia is proposing an alternative agenda. Russia is proposing the BRICS cooperation. Russia is proposing the investments. Russia is proposing new technologies. For example, if speaking about energy diplomacy, yes, you see the Ukrainian elites, I mean the Biden's administration, they use the Ukrainian conflict to refocus the European markets for the American. oil and gas. So right now, although America is the main partner, official partner in this sphere, the European countries, they continue to purchase the Russian energy supplies, but for another price through shadow schema. That's why sometimes we have a strange situation. For example, when the Ukrainian conflict was started and the European Union introduced the sanctions against Russia, not only against Russia like a state, but also, for example, against Russian universities like public universities. So, in such situation, the president declared a list of countries which are not friendly countries. So right now within Russian foreign policy agenda, we have a special term, non-friendly countries. And all the countries of the European Union were included automatically because European Union is sanctioning Russia every time, everywhere. Right now, this is the, I think, the eighth package of sanctions at the moment. So, but even in such situation, among European countries, there were some countries which considered to preserve the relations with Russia in different spheres, like Hungary, for example, like Slovakia. And right now, Hungary is benefiting all advantages of the oil transit from Russia, and Hungary can get extra benefits by resolving the gas and oil to other European members, which are non-friendly countries. So it means we have specific relations with some European countries. And 1 month ago, it was published another document, the document about the countries with the traditional and non-traditional values. So this is in the sphere just of the culture of ethics. And some countries which are propagating non-traditional values were listed. And for example, within this list, it appeared just a number, most of the European countries, except Hungary and except Slovakia. It was strange, but it's a sign, just like a political signal, that Slovakia and Hungary are sharing the same political values, same values like family, like traditional society, like marriage institute, like Russia, for example. If needed, I can share this document if you would like to read. So, if speaking about the brands, yes, it's very interesting question because although the financial security, most of the Russian funds were saved, were kept in Western banks. It was a challenge for security, and one of the reasons of the Western sanctions and of this opposition that Russia started to remove its funds from the Western financial system. So when the operation in Ukraine was started, Russian finances were blocked, but at the same time, many foreign investment from Western countries were in response blocked on Russian territory. So, and for example, if speaking about sanctions, about brands, etc. For example, we have Coca-Cola. Yes, and the process of the Western presence in different countries worldwide is very often called Coca-colonization because Coca-Cola is one of the most reputable Western brands. So Coca-Cola declared that it will leave Russia, and it left, really. But all Coca-Cola plants were rebranded, and right now we have our own Dobry Cola. It's produced under Coca-Cola technologies. It's produced by the former Coca-Cola managers on the ground of the former Coca-Cola plants. So, but it's cheaper because we do not need to pay for brand, the royalty, I mean. At the same time, you can find Coca-Cola in Russian shops, and Coca-Cola is received within the schema of the shadow import when we can purchase the goods abroad and transfer to Russia. And right now we have Coca-Cola from China, from Kazakhstan, from Kyrgyzstan, from Arab Emirates, from Iran. So it's very strange that Iran, for example, is also a sanctioned country, but we can get Coca-Cola from Iran. Another very known brand was McDonald's. You know, right now in Russia we have preserved all the bistros of McDonald's, but right now under our own brand Вкусные точка. And suddenly McDonald's understood that it had to close its restaurants in Kazakhstan, for example, in former Soviet countries. Why? Because they were oriented on Russian foods, on the products furnished from Russia. It means that Russian brand Вкусные точка will expand and will occupy the fast food markets in the post-Soviet area too. If speaking about the car brands, really, I think this is just we have immediately we have at the same time two processes. The first process it was the process of the crisis of the European car industries. So, if you explore the history of car concerns in Great Britain, in European countries, even in the United States, you can see that most of them have been already purchased by Chinese companies, or Chinese companies are among the actionaries of these companies. The Western countries also faced the crisis in production in the Eastern markets. For example, I was in China, I has already mentioned, and 5 years ago, there were a lot of Western cars in China, but produced in China, of course, on the local plants under the trademark of Western companies. But sorry, right now, most of the Western car plants are closing or removed from China, and China is in process to develop its own brand. So, and the European producers, car producers, they also lost access to cheap resources from Russia. First of all, cheap energy. That's why we can see just a crisis situation in Germany, in Czech Republic, when many people from car plants are losing their job. It became more and more expensive to produce cars in Europe. But in China, the car production is closed for most of the European trademarks, except Tesla. Tesla is one of the most privileged trademarks because they have Elon Musk. He has specific relations with China authorities, so I think personal privileged relations. If speaking about Russia, of course, for example, in Russia, you know that Chinese investors also came. We have just the process when Chinese investors replace the European investors. Because, for example, in Nizhny Novgorod, we have a gas car plant. Previously, it was funded by the American Chrysler, and we produced Volga Cyber under American technologies. Right now, we lost Chrysler as investor, but for example, in Nizhny Novgorod, we will produce our own car within the Russian technologies. But as the case of Moskvich, you mentioned, yes, they took the technology of Chinese car producer. They just rebranded it, so it means the trademark of Moskvich, the logo of Moskvich, and it was built in Russia. Yes, you are completely right, but it's not a single way how to develop the car industry. So it means that Russia can develop the car brands together with China, as well as European producers has left the market. And at the same time, Russia also will build its own trademarks, its own traditions within Russian technologies. We have necessary technologies, we have necessary materials, and we have necessary ideas because the Russian car designer school is famous. Yes, to apply for the Russian scholarship, you can contact Alar. And as I know right now, the call for the scholarship is in process. So please contact our organization, and the scholarship is provided for different programs, sometimes for full degrees, for PhD, sometimes for summer schools. So you have a wide range of opportunities. So, for example, if speaking about technology and innovations in case of sovereignty, for example, we have a case of Rosatom company. So, Rosatom, this is National Russian Nuclear Energy Agency, which is a public company, and at the same time Rosatom is in process of sustainable development of Russian economy, as well as in charge to provide the technological sovereignty of for its partner countries. Nuclear energy right now is the green energy. This is the cheap and very efficient. For example, of course, we have wind energy, for example, but wind energy is enough for your house, but not for the full industries, for example. As for nuclear plant, is good for the whole industries. If you have cheap or sometimes free energy, you can develop your technologies, and you can be independent from the neighboring countries. But in case of Rosatom, for example, right now, there are 30 nuclear plants being built abroad, and 28 of them are built by Rosatom. So it means this company has more than 90% of the market. But in addition, Rosatom is developing different businesses in different spheres, mostly new technologies. And the main idea is to provide the technological sovereignty of the partner countries. For example, nuclear medicine, the small or medium nuclear plants, additive technology, I mean 3D printing and 3D modeling, new sources of energy, including wind energy or water energy supplies, IT, Internet of Things, it means wise towns, for example. So it means different things, and the main question is, for example, you can go to the country like a customer for. It means you can offer something and the country will buy or not, or you can design together with this country a new product and offer it to the third country. In this case, this country will be your partner. And if this is your partner, of course, the technological sovereignty is to be provided. For example, even building nuclear plant. This is the long-term project for 1 century. First to build, next to use, and next to just utilize, to stop the activities. But to build nuclear plant, first of all, you should create necessary infrastructure, necessary environment, for example. You have the standards of the exploitation of nuclear plants, and if this is Rosatom, so the standards are Russian standards. It means you should speak Russian because in this case it will be easier for you. It means you should learn Russian. But except nuclear plant, you should have also managers, economists, sociologists, politicians, so medical doctors, etc. in this sphere. So it's a really huge project which can transformate just the economy of the whole country. That's why when we are speaking about technological sovereignty, we are really serious. This is the partnership win to win. Of course, I support. And so the question, the idea of closer approach from Russia to the countries of the American continent. You know, we have a very similar, I mean, sometimes lifestyle. It's the manana style. And for example, we have really so many Latin American students staying in Russia. And you know, we have Russian holidays, we have ice swimming, and Latin American students are always ready to take part. So it means our cultures sometimes are very similar, and the lifestyle, the relations, how to live, how to relax is also very similar. So, if speaking about approach, what do you mean? So, of course, we have, for example, Russian and Spanish language, or sometimes Portugal language. In Russia, Spanish language is very popular, and many people are trying to learn Spanish. I think in Latin America right now, sorry, in American continent, we have the Festival of Russian Language, Science and Culture at the moment. We have some serious technical initiatives. We have joint research programs. For example, we are closely cooperating with some countries like Cuba, Venezuela. We are interested to develop cooperation with Colombia, with Peru. 2 times I was in Mexico, and I would like to come one time more. So I think we are open to all initiatives from your side. We are ready to support, and we are ready to act together in different spheres. So, if speaking about the BRICS, the question about BRICS, you know, BRICS, it's not like an international organization, and Russia as well, some other member states are trying to make a distance from formalization of BRICS, for example, like NATO is doing. BRICS should be like the union of the state based on the win-win strategy. For example, our university hosted the ICT working group. It means it was the group of information and communication technology and high performance computing. So we discussed how we will transform the IT industries in our countries. And of course, for example, each country has its own strategy based on its own vision, its own resources. For example, China is in process to establish 5G plus technologies. For example, for Russia and Brazil, even 4G is okay at the moment. So that's why we respect the position of each member. But sometimes, if speaking about BRICS, previously Russia was considered as a leading state. But right now, many actors are talking that China is the leading state of BRICS countries. The question is that really there is no leader. It depends, the BRICS cooperation depends on the activity of each country. Each country can initiate the project, can provide resources, and in this case, it will play the first role. But there is the presidency which is changing within the rotation every year, and the next presidency will be given to Brazil. So it means that next year the focus of BRICS agenda will replace to Latin America. Yes, as for the scholarships, I think Alar will share, yes, this information. If speaking about the scholarship, I see the scholarship. You are very interested in scholarship. So first of all, there is the scholarships of the Russian government. They are provided for all Russian universities, I mean public universities at different levels of education. And the application deadline right now is in process. The application deadline is the 15th of January. And my colleagues, my partners from Alar, they can guide you how to apply for the scholarship. We have the long-term experience of cooperation of consultancy in this sphere. The next way this is to take part in the Olympiads held by leading Russian universities. And for example, Rudan Universities held its own Olympiad, as well as Lobachevsky University also is organizing the Olympiad Lobachevsky Rud. This is Olympiad, Creative Olympiad of Russian language and culture. And the call for applications will start the 1st of December. So it means you have all chances to take part, to get necessary experience, and maybe to find new contacts in the networks in the sphere of Russian language and culture. And of course, Alar, as the partner of Lobachevsky University, can always help you.
Thank you very much. One of our participants raised his hand. Luis,
Yes.
usted tiene algo que decir o preguntar?
Hello.
Hello.
I just want to share my point of view about a situation that I think we are living, at least here in Mexico. The thing is, I think that we are in a global monopoly, in something that goes beyond trademarks. Because if we take a look at all the products that we use and consume, all those products are from the same sphere of influence. Think about, okay, what do we have? We have Windows or iOS. We have Microsoft or Apple. We got, I don't know, Twitter or Instagram. All the products that we are using are in the same sphere of influence that goes US and mostly to the G7 countries. And I know that there are other brandings, other programs, other services don't scale at bigger scale. Like, for example, I know that there is like Bilibili in China that it's the equivalent of YouTube, or there is also Yandex or BK Social in Russia. But most of the products are of influence. Something that kind of breaks away of this situation, it might sound a little bit crisp, but we can look at the case of TikTok. TikTok is a very popular app. Most of people use it. It has a lot of content. It has revenue. It has a lot of things that people like and go to that app. And that is a new thing because it's a Chinese app. It's something new that kind of breaks away of this global monopoly. And my question is, do you think that in a future we will have a market more diverse industry with more options in services, in products. Do you think that could be possible?
Yes, of course. It's possible. For example, you are talking about the famous trademarks, yes, and most of them appeared like a result of the so-called globalization. But sorry, right now, due to the sanctions, due to the national policies, even sometimes the trade clash between the United States and the European Union, between the economic disputes between China and the United States, we have the processes called globalization. So, for example, we have a sample of China, yes, and the sample of the Huawei company. For a long time, Huawei company used the processors from Taiwan and from California, from the United States. But when Huawei started to compete with Apple and started to win within technological decisions, within price policies, in such situation, America imposes sanctions and denied to sell semiconductors and processors from Taiwan and from America to China. In such a situation, Huawei started to develop its own processors, Snapdragon, you know, and right now they are also in process to create a new operation system like analog of Android or Apple system like iOS. So it means China is in process to build an alternative way, alternative technology, alternative technological culture. In Russia, for example, we are facing the similar situation. We have our own software. For example, Rosatom company is producing Lotus software, but it's very specific one. It's mostly for nuclear plant right now to provide the cybersecurity for nuclear plant industries. As for Microsoft, for example, of course, all of us, we use Microsoft. But several times Microsoft announced it will close its services for people of Russia, but they didn't. Although, of course, some universities like Bauman State Universities right now are under the sanctions, and Microsoft denied all licenses for public university sector. In such situation, we have our own operation system, which is Linux system. So it means the technologies appeared already. For example, if speaking about messengers, okay, you've mentioned VK. We have also, for example, Telegram, yes, which is international messenger right now, but it has been produced by a Russian programmer, not Pavel Durov, but by his brother. Pavel Durov is just a PR man. So we have also some other ideas, some are others technologies. It means right now, what's the Russia's problem? So I mean, or challenge, because the situation with Russia showed worldwide that sorry, we are in the situation of insecurity in the sphere of information, in the sphere of our money, in the sphere of our technology, that somebody can remotely block all our activities, can block our credit card, for example, can block the hotel booking, can block something to make our life uncomfortable, can freeze our money in the bank. So in such a situation, we are trying to find our alternative, more secured way. So I think you can see, for example, the currencies market. Yes, right now for a long time we have dollar as the main currency, and we have until now. But many banks worldwide face their restrictions that right now they can't accept the old banknotes of dollars. Sorry, officially you can use dollars even issued in the beginning of the 20th century. They didn't change these banknotes. But right now, the American Federal Reserve System informed the banks worldwide that because of the fraudery, they recommend them do not accept the old banknotes. So what to do with them? It's provoked just a little crisis already. If speaking about messenger, like for example, Telegram, you not like Telegram, like how to say? You told already. Like X Messenger of Elon Musk, for example, you know, he rebranded it because of the policy. We are facing the fact-checking situation in media sphere. For example, previously, sorry, we can see the media from, for example, BBC, CNN, Russian First Channel, RT, local broadcasting companies, and analyze the information and find just like the medium correct way. But right now we have a monopoly for broadcasting technologies, for example. Yes, there are two hands at the same time. So, Hugo?
Luis, es
Okay,
bastante
yeah, I
por
have a
usted.
question.
Yes, yes, you're welcome.
Sure, let me lower this out so it doesn't bother. My question is the following. In Russia, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, of course.
In Russia, there are cultural policies, and there's legislation that promotes traditional values and resistance to what in Western the world is perceived as a Western liberal ideologies.
Mhm.
I lived many years in California, and I saw the change that occurred in California from 1991 until the year I stopped living there and came back to Mexico.
Mhm.
So these Western liberal ideologies such as woke culture, trans rights, we're changing the core culture in the United States. What I would like to know is if you could elaborate in which specific institutions or government bodies are primarily responsible for implementing these policies. And if you could also additionally explain us how these institutions collaborate to ensure that these values are reflected in the law, in the media, and in the education. Thanks.
Okay, I can explain. So, first of all, of course, there are some restriction of propagation of non-traditional values. And for example, in Russia, if speaking about non-traditional, it's clear for everybody. What does it mean, non-traditional? Because Russia has a long history of traditional values respect. For example, in Soviet time, some features of liberal ideologies were sanctioned, were punished legally. Okay, in 1990s and later, Russian society actively adopted liberal values, and sometimes the minorities seem to be like the majorities because very often they were sometimes more active in propagation of their values, of their agenda, and by this way sometimes they violated the interests and the rights of the majorities of the people. But Russian society was tolerant for a long time. The problem happened around 2000. So tolerance, so it means please do not propagate, but you can share these values. But the problem, I think the peak point happened around 2018 when such communities started to engage the children into the activities and started to propagate among them not only the liberal values but also the political agenda. And it happened some political manifestations with the participation of children, but organized by the people staying abroad. So it means after that, all liberal values were reviewed by this point of view. And right now, the propagation of some values in Russia is considered like an extremism at legal level. But in general, what the control mechanism? The control mechanism, it's not the police control. The control mechanism, this is the active public control, because the society, the majority of the society doesn't share these ideas, and they can stop the manifestation of such trends by themselves. Yeah.
Yes. One more question. You know, I think this conference is for a lot for students of the Latin American Russian Association. My question is the following. I understand in August, President Putin signed a decree in which he would take some of the requirements in order to immigrate to Russia, which has an understanding of the culture and language, in order for people from certain countries to be able to move to Russia. And these countries were like denominated woke countries. However, you know, being from Latin America, in many countries, we have the same views as people in Russia, and people would like to move there. I mean, how come they did not include Latin American countries, and specifically Mexico, in this decree?
Okay, so I think we have two waves of the migrations. First of all, yes, such decree has been signed, and it was the list with the traditional values, and the people who are sharing these traditional values were invited to come to Russia and to settle if discredited in their native countries. And for example, I can just present the case of Nizhny Novgorod region. We have approximately 20 families who settled from Germany. They came to Nizhny Novgorod, they were given with lands, they were given with building materials, and they built their village. And right now they are staying in Nizhny Novgorod in security, they can do farming, etc. They are just so happy because they consider that to stay in Russia for them is more comfortable rather to stay in Germany. The same thing happened with the family in Canada. Because they stayed in Canada, they've got 7 children. So, but when coming to school, they learned about gender equality and some other issues like traditional families. They dislike this. So traditional, I do not mean radical, of course. I'm thinking the family of traditional values like existed, for example, in the middle of the 20th century. So, and this family also removed to Nizhny Novgorod region. So, and right now they are living here. They started to learn Russian language, of course, and their children next year will go to school. to study together with Russian children. At the same time, the people who are sharing traditional liberal values when the operation in Ukraine started, they told they will be political immigrants, they left Russia, they moved to foreign countries. And for example, for Russian society, it became even easier because the tension decreased. But at the same time, these people who came for another country, they shocked sometimes the traditional society, which who considered Russians to be more traditional ones. For example, I have a case of Serbia. The people who migrated to Serbia, they considered Serbia like a transit point, and they dreamed to stay in Serbia, next to migrate to Italy, to France, to Germany. But surprisingly for them, Italy, France, or Germany didn't get visa for them, and they had to stay in Serbia. But in Serbia, they continued to practice the same lifestyle like they practiced in Moscow, for example, or in St. Petersburg. And for traditional Serbian society, it's not good, and they're shocked by such behavior of Russian, they called immigrants. Because sometimes with these countries we have also some historical background, and in case of Serbia, for example, previously the first wave of immigrants who came, they built the Serbian statehood, they helped to build the first universities, to open the first libraries, they helped to develop the country. The new wave of immigrants, of course not all of them, there are good people who just would like to change their life, to leave Russia due to different reasons. But the most active of such people who started to organize the political manifestations abroad, etc., they are not traditional Russians. Did I answer your question?
I was my question was, how come they did not include in the new decree Latin American countries to immigrate to Russia?
Worldwide. So if you would like to migrate to Russia, you are welcome. But for example, just the case, for example, to stay in Russia, it's better that you speak Russian.
No, yeah, I understand that.
Yes, and in accordance with new decree, we face the situation of just some kind of migration crisis. Because, for example, we have students like migrants, yes, coming to Russia, but students are coming to get education first. And of course, when completing the education, they can speak Russian, they've got diploma, they can be engaged like professionals. At the same time, we case worker migrants coming, for example, from Central Asia. They are not interested to learn Russian. But they are interested to get Russian citizenship, for example, to get some social privileges. And for example, the police, when it's speaking about the criminal activity of the migrants, when they are thinking about to make cruel the system of Russian language exams, they are speaking mostly about this category of the people, the people who wouldn't like to integrate into the society.
Understand.
It's not the case, for example, of the students, and not the case of the people who would like to come to Russia to share the values, to integrate the society, and just to find a new motherland like this.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Luis?
Thank you very much. I think Luis just forgot to down his hand.
There are two hands.
Luis, do you have any
Yes,
questions
Leonardo.
or not?
Leonardo? Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, Zdravujte, good afternoon. I am an IPN student. Thank you very much for the conference. It was very informative. And I'm not going to do some questions. The question I made was about the Russian car industry, but what I want to do is to tell you something. Um, if you come to Mexico once again, we would like to invite you to the Wall of Memory event on May 9th at the Russian Embassy. We will be so grateful if you could join us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I hope I will come. If Alar will invite me, I will.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Luis, your hands is on.
I think he taught before.
Yeah, maybe he forgotten.
I think he forgotten. Okay, Konstantin Valerievich, thank you very much for that interesting and informative presentation and discussion. We have a few comments in our chat. My favorite presentation this week. Thanks a lot. Thank you. It's very interesting in Russian. Thank you. Excellent discussion. Thank you so much for your answer. We all are grateful to you for your presentation for today. Thank you very much. I think all questions were answered fully. So we can finish for today. One more comment in the chat, thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. So in Russia, this is the night time already. And as for you, have a productive day. Good luck. Bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.